as we know recently, not just recently, but for the last few months or so, there's been unrest and tension caused by Russia against the Ukrainian state. However, just because this tension has been present, this doesn't negate the issues of the past that have plagued and shaped how the Ukrainian economy and people have become and responded to such violence. Which is why today, when we're posed with the quote by the Ukrainian boxer Vladimir Krinkov, we have to see that radiation knows no borders, the quote that he stated so proudly in response to the Chernobyl incident that happened so many generations ago, still reigns supreme to this day. Now, to understand and unpack this quote, we number one have to provide a basis and an analysis for how we should internalize this quote, to which number two, we'll see how this quote plays out in everyday, day-to-day lives for the emotional sphere of the human psyche. So, to begin with, radiation knows no borders. This quote by the Ukrainian boxer again was stated during a time of civil unrest between that of the communist power and impending socialistic life for everyday Ukrainians. And during this time period, we can understand that the people, although society may not have been the most peaceful, were happy each and amongst themselves, even though the higher powers were trying to gnash them and rock them off their feet with political instability as well as financial scarcity. So with this, we have to understand, we can take this to understand it more on a emotional level by equating the radiation to being the everyday emotions that people have that we either do or don't allow us to express ourselves, just like the impending socialistic or communistic ideals that were trying to shake the Ukrainian people off of their feet during the Ukraine's time with the Soviet Union. And very similarly, the borders in these cases can be people's reactions to such emotions that we enact on them. The borders, just like those that the people had to put up when they were trying to establish their limitations against a manifesting and very communistic or empowering authoritative government. So with this baseline understanding of how we will analyze the radiation and the borders with today's quote, we can further go on to an analysis of the emotions behind it and how we are to secure not only our borders, but ourselves from such chaos in life. Radiation itself has no limitations. Just like we know with every single atomic bomb that is dropped, many lives are taken in the process, and it takes a process of years, if not generations, to restore the land back to its former self. However, emotions can be very similar. Just like every single word we spell or we cast or we tell somebody has power, not only for the person who we actually tell these things to, but for ourselves. The lasting emotional damage and psychological impacts that are caused by our words and intentions to other people can be critical. However, using a more psychological analysis of this, we can go back to the understanding of evolutionary psychology, which tells us that every action or behavior that we have is meant for self-preservation, which is why the human body has an ability to restore and heal itself. Even though we go through very many stressful everyday experiences, such as, for example, being told we've been laid off from work, to having divorces, breakups, and bad news of deaths, each and every bad experience, word, or phrase that we come across can bounce right off of us, and we go on with life because humans are resilient creatures. And just like the Ukrainians were, whenever this quote, "Radiation knows no borders," was spoken, just like how Chernobyl couldn't deter the emotional experience and the resilience of the Ukrainian and Russian Slavic people, we see that we shouldn't either. We should not let the experiences and everyday words that we come across impact us too terribly long. And just like how each and every scenario in which there's ever been an experience where there has been war or chaos or famine, people remain resilient. We have built ourselves back up piece by piece, brick by brick, and come out on top each and every time. So just like the land of Chernobyl, racked by radiation, death, poverty, life is being brought back to this region. Just like after the war on Ukraine, Ukraine is making a comeback in today's status quo, and people shouldn't be any different. So when analyzing today's quote, we can understand radiation does know no borders, but it doesn't mean that we have to succumb to our experiences. And we can see this, number one, by understanding how this quote was enacted and impacted both in the historical context and in the literal. And number two, seeing how this can play out in our day-to-day lives as humans with emotional, psychological evaluations. Thank you.